Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Dear students, you are welcome in this lecture. Now we will discuss fertilizer-water interactions, crop production under fertilizer or water constraints. The learning objectives are to understand the role of roots in nutrients and water interaction, learn the interaction of different levels of water and nutrients in soil on crop growth and yield. As you know that nutrients and water are very critical input that affect the growth of the crops. Let us see how this water is important for growth of the crops. By now most of you understand how much these nutrients are important. If we want best use of water, we should supply sufficient quantities of the nutrients. Similarly, if we want good output from the nutrients, we should supply sufficient quantity of water. Their effect depend very much upon each other. So let us understand some terminology related to this lecture. Ammonia volatilization. Transfer of nitrogen as ammonia gas from soil, plant or liquid systems to the atmosphere. It is actually vaporization of ammonia. Deep percolation, the downward movement of water at the bottom of the soil profile, which represents a loss of water from the root zone. Denitrification, as the name suggests, reduction of nitrogen oxides, usually nitrate and nitrite, to molecular nitrogen, that is N2, or nitrous oxide, that is N2O, with a lower oxidation state of nitrogen by bacterial activity is denitrification, or by chemical reactions involving nitrite. Chemodenitrification means it is a biological as well as a chemical process. Fertilizer, any organic or inorganic material of natural or synthetic origin other than liming materials that is added to a soil to supply one or more plant nutrients essential to the growth of the plants is called as a fertilizer. Leaching is the removal of soluble materials from one zone in soil to another via water movement in the profile. Now see what is soil profile, a vertical section of the soil through all its horizons and extending into the sea horizon. Root zone, the portion of the soil profile from which plants absorb water and nutrients is root zone. Soil horizon, a layer of soil or soil material approximately parallel to the land surface and differing from adjacent genetically related layers in physical, chemical and biological properties or characteristics such as color, structure, texture, consistency, kinds and number of organisms present, degree of acidity or alkalinity. Let us see role of water or moisture in plant growth. How much or how this water is important for crop growth. So water is definitely required for life. It is source of hydrogen and oxygen, which are essential nutrients for any plant. Manufacture of carbohydrate, or that is your assimilation of carbon dioxide. Photosynthesis cannot happen without water. Maintenance of the hydration of the protoplasm. Movement of nutrients in soil, this is how water is important. If there is no sufficient water, movement of ions will be restricted. Movement of nutrients in plants, within the plant system also, if you want to move the nutrients, water is required. Translocation of manufactured food, moderation of temperature, in all these water is essential. So both low and high levels may affect the growth. Moisture stress reduces cell division and enlargement. If your plant is kind of mesophyte or xerophyte and you put too much of water, create artificially waterlogging condition, these plants will not survive. Similarly, if your plant is hydrophyte aquatic kind of plant. If you do not keep sufficient water, enough water, it will also die. So, we need to have some optimum levels of water depending upon the nature or kind of the plant. Excess moisture, what can it do to the mesophyte plants or xerophyte plants? It reduces soil aeration, supply of oxygen available to the roots. With poor aeration, the activities of beneficial microorganisms also reduced. Water and the nutrient uptake reduced except in rice, which is aquatic plant. Now, moisture deficit, what happens to the plant? Closing of stomata, reduced transpiration, reduced photosynthesis, reduction in cell division and elongation, and reduced growth and yield. If a plant is not getting enough water supply, then definitely its growth is going to be affected or growth is going to be suffer. Let us see importance of fertilizer and water interaction. Why this interaction is important and how this interaction is important. The interactions between fertilizer and water is called nutrient water interaction, because fertilizers ultimately release the nutrients to the soil. So, students can call it fertilizer water interaction or nutrient water interaction, or other way around also you can call it water nutrient interaction or fertilizer interaction. The supply of water and plant nutrients have very large influence on crop production and also on the efficiencies of both irrigation and fertilizers. High water use efficiency is secured only when crops have access to the sufficient supplies of nutrients. Similarly, full returns from fertilizer or full advantage from fertilizer are achieved only when water supplies are adequate to meet the crop's requirement. If there is shortage of water supply, nutrients are adequate, there will not be better advantage of this situation. However, supply of water in excess or at an inappropriate times may result in losses of mobile nutrients from the system. For example, nitrogen, it can be lost by leaching. Water status regulates the movement of nutrients by mass flow and diffusion in soils that affect the nutrient uptake. Means at this stage, if there is shortage of water or shortage of moisture in the soil, the nutrients or ions will not reach the plant roots, because the mass flow and diffusion, both process happen due to presence of water or by water. So, water use efficiency of plants depends largely on physiological processes, which in turn are influenced by nutrients in them. So, they are always interacting. Nitrogen causes rapid increases in leaf area and photosynthesis, resulting in reduced evaporation of water from the soil surface. So, therefore, in this case nitrogen is reducing the water requirement. Potassium ions have a critical role in osmotic processes in the plant and practically in stomatal regulation. So, they can control transpiration or loss of water, sufficient potassium feeding. So, the influences of drought are often associated with the reduced phosphate uptake. That means, under drought conditions, if we give sufficient phosphorus supply to the plant, it can very well counter the ill effect of drought. Water supplies also regulate the microbiological processes involved in soil fertility and particularly the biological fixation of nitrogen. So, these microbes also require ideal moisture conditions for their activity. If we have too much of water, excess water or waterlogging, submerged condition, then these aerobic microbes will die and their activity will reduce. Similarly, other way around, if we have too much or too little supply of water, there is not enough water, dry conditions, then also microbe will not perform their activities. So, it is proved through experiments that method and timing of irrigation influences the efficiency of fertilizers. Thus, the practical management of water and plant nutrients should be carefully optimized. We want best levels of nutrient and best levels of water, so that we get maximum return from both these. For example, the people have done some work on drip or trickle irrigation system, where fertigation can be practiced, where application of fertilizer and water can be combined, and this is really very good practice, where efficiency of both fertilizer as well as water increases. So, drip irrigation system make it possible to apply both inputs in one operation to the roots of the crop, so that maximum fertilizer use efficiency is achieved. And also there is lot of saving of water by drip system. So, drip system can be installed. There are different categories or groups of drip system. Some are very cheap and some are very expensive. Now, soil water affects crop nutrition. Now, we will learn or we will see how supply of water will affect the nutrition of the crop, the supply of fertilizers, supply of nutrients. So, application of optimum nutrients without sufficient water supply result in low utilization of applied nutrients. Similarly, application of lower doses of nutrients under adequate water supply causes a waste of the valuable water. That means the water will not be fully utilized, its capacity will not be fully exploited because the nutrient levels are low. So, according to the water supply, we need to raise the supply of the nutrients. Water management is thus inseparable from good nutrient management practices and vice versa. They are made for each other. Now, soil moisture status has major influences on productive processes such as the accessibility, availability, uptake and use of soil nutrients for crop growth. Means after the application of nutrients till the mobilization in the plant system, this presence of water is very necessary. Then only plants can successfully utilize the nutrients, because it is needed for the transport of nutrients, for the uptake of nutrient, and within the plant system transport or mobilization occur only under the presence of sufficient water. So, excess soil moisture supply have negative effects such as creating anaerobic conditions, and losses of nutrients can also happen due to excess nutrient. If excess water, if losses of nutrients happen, that means use efficiency of the nutrients will go down and it will be a waste of nutrients and farmers will put to the loss. Now, see very fantastic picture, it explains the influence of soil water supply on plant nutrition. So, it was made by Fink. Fink has written very good books on soil fertility, fertilizers, and in one book he has used most of his work in pictures. He has depicted the subject of soil fertility and fertilizer in pictures. So, you can see one of the picture is here. In the center you have soil and water. Water is there in the soil. So, there may be 4 cases. First case you see deficit, there is deficit of water in the soil. So, what can happen if there is deficit of water in soil? So, it reduces nutrient diffusion. You can see it lessens or reduces nutrient diffusion, mass flow is also reduced, and mineral dissolution means minerals will not be dissolved in the solution or in the water. Also there is reduction in plant growth. Now, see excess, if there is excess water, nutrient leaching potential will increase, losses of nutrients, nitrogen denitrification will also happen because conditions become anaerobic. There is no proper oxygen supply in the soil system. Thus, under these conditions, denitrification is encouraged. Then iron, manganese or even aluminum solubility increases. These elements can become at a toxic level. They can cause toxicity in the plant systems, and because of all these, plant growth can be reduced. Now, see another case where you have on the left side you see optimum nutrients. If your nutrients are at optimum level, what will happen? Plant growth will increase or improve, nutrient uptake will improve, and nutrient use efficiency will also improve, and you see nutrient use efficiency will increase the water use efficiency, and also the nutrient cycling is improved. So, these are the advantages of optimum supply of nutrients. See on the right side, optimum supply of water, H2O is water, I think you know it. So, this optimum supply increases plant growth and it increases water use efficiency and it also increases nutrient use efficiency. So, these are the advantages of optimum supply of nutrient as well as water. Now, see what happens to the root growth in relation to water supply. So, root growth of crops affects the nutrient uptake, and water supply influences the root growth. So, under most of the circumstances, we want to have a good growth of the roots, so that other benefits like nutrient uptake, water uptake can be easily derived. So, optimum moisture supply results in vigorous and deeper root growth. We really want deeper root growth for many benefits, and both water and nutrients become accessible to plants from deeper soil layers where moisture is adequate. So, we definitely need a vigorous root growth. See this case. In this case, this picture says that the top 25% of the root zone is the first to be exhausted of available moisture. You see, just in 25% rooting depth of the effective root zone, 40% moisture is used. You further next 25%, only 30% is used. Go deeper, next 25%, only 20% of the total moisture is used from this layer, and then last 25 of 1/4, it is just 10% water is used. So, most of the water is used from the surface areas of the effective root zone. So, the dry conditions in soil restrict the water uptake. For example, during drought, the rate of root extension is reduced in soil. Even for the growth of the roots, we need good supply of water or of low fertility, and the plant is unable to access deeper moist horizons in the soil. If our root growth is very restricted, we cannot take advantage of water which is available on the deeper root zone or deeper soils. In most soils, the nutrient content is highest in the top soil, and this horizon dries out first. So, although the plant is able to absorb some water from the subsoil, this may not be sufficient to obtain adequate nutrients for active growth. That means that most of the nutrients are confined in the upper layer, but water is not there, sufficient water is not there. So, we need to supply the deficit of water, we need to maintain the shortage of water to the optimum level. Now, where the soil is well supplied with phosphates, now comes the role of phosphate. Before planting, the plant can develop a vigorous and deep root system before the onset of mid-season drought. I think most of the students understand the value of phosphorus. It is necessary for better root development and also for flowering, and it has a special role particularly in dicots, legumes. Legumes, it has a special role where it increases root system. So, even when the surface soil becomes dry, such roots are capable of absorbing water and nutrients from deeper layers. So, adequate phosphorus supply can counter the ill effect of drought conditions. In such cases, phosphate application can be considered as an insurance against the drought. So, you need to remember this is a statement. Under dry conditions, we should have adequate supply of phosphorus because it enhances root growth and which can extract water from the deeper layers. So, it not only increases root growth, but also enables a more efficient use of stored soil water that would otherwise have been out of reach of poorly developed roots. Now, let us see water and nutrient availability, the direct interaction, how water influences the nutrient availability. So, soil moisture affects the solubility and thus availability of all nutrients. Means if we do not have water, the nutrients will not get solubilized. Biological activity in the soil is reduced in too wet or too dry soil. If biological activity is reduced, that means the availability or decomposition of organic matter will be affected and nutrients will not be mineralized. We will not get nutrients in mineral form and also in solution form. So, the breakdown of organic matter slowed down in dry soils, decreasing the availability of nitrogen and other mineral nutrients. Some nutrients also come from organic matter like sulfur, phosphorus. So, they also come from the organic matter. Therefore, availability of such nutrients will also decline. During dry periods, there is little accumulation of mineral nitrogen in soil. The use of irrigation can minimize fluctuations in the soil biological activity during crop growth. One of the significant on moderate rainfall is to increase soil nutrient supply from organic sources. Mineralization of other nutrients such as phosphorus and sulfur also increases with adequate soil moisture. Not only phosphorus and sulfur, it is potassium also. The availability of mineral potassium and other cations is also improved by a satisfactory soil moisture status. In dry soils, cations in general are highly bound to soil colloids, not easily exchangeable, and therefore a less available or rather less accessible to plant roots, means the exchangeable cations availability also decreases due to decrease in water availability. In addition, as the volume of soil solution is smaller, the amount of sparingly soluble nutrients such as phosphorus is reduced and plants are unable to absorb them in required quantities. Take the case of waterlogged soil. So, the concentration of ammonium ions, phosphorus, iron and manganese increase and nitrate nitrogen decreases because of leaching and denitrification. So, under waterlogged conditions, there is creation of one aerobic layer which is just 1 millimeter or 2 millimeter in thickness. So, in this layer nitrification happens. Nitrification of nitrogen happens and it is converted to the nitrates, and then immediately they leach down to the anaerobic area of the soil, or they leach down to the anaerobic zone in the soil where denitrification happens, and this nitrogen is converted or nitrate is converted into nitrogen and escaping into the air or atmosphere. So, uptake of many nutrients by rice such as nitrogen, phosphorus, manganese and iron increases under waterlogged conditions, but the uptake of other cations may be reduced. As nutrients need to move only a short distance, adequate soil moisture favors the mass flow of nutrients from soil solution to the root surface. So, here also supply of water is necessary so that nutrients should reach the roots of the plant for uptake. Movement by diffusion within the soil solution is important for several phosphorus and potassium, and it is aided by adequate soil moisture. Roots intercept more nutrients, especially calcium and magnesium, in a moist soil than in a dry soil because root growth is more extensive. Now, the uptake of nutrients by crops is also enhanced where the plants have an adequate water status. Efficient use of nutrients within the plant for growth and metabolism also depends on a regular supply of water. Under water deficit, the transport of absorbed nutrients within the plant is restricted. So, water deficit also reduces metabolic activities and plant biomass production, which can ultimately reduce the yield and nutrient content of the economic produce. Means it is not just a restriction of the nutrient uptake and metabolism. There are several other effects of water in the plant system. For example, number of biochemical and physiological reactions or actions are influenced by the water within the plant body. So, there may not be proper metabolic activities in the plant system and it can reduce the growth. It will lead to the reduced growth of the plants. Water and nutrient absorption. So, definitely water is necessary for proper absorption of the nutrient. Here absorption means just kind of uptake. So, nutrient absorption is directly affected by soil water content and indirectly by the effect of water on metabolic activity, degree of soil aeration and solution salt concentration. Plant growth and yield potential is greater with normal or higher moisture availability. You must underline this point. However, even in dry seasons, adequate nutrient availability greatly increases yield and water use efficiency. So, this kind of relationship must be remembered by you. Adequate nutrient supply is critical for efficient crop water use and enhanced crop tolerance to low soil water supply. Even in the conditions of poor or low moisture supply, if we have adequate plant nutrition of certain elements, then we can get good yield and good growth of the plant. Continuing water and nutrient absorption, in relation to adequate nutrient supply and efficient crop water use, the following points are very relevant. Number 1, adequate nutrient supply favors expanded root growth, means root growth is enhanced. If roots explore an additional 30 centimeter depth, 2.5 to 5 centimeter of water can be obtained. Number 2, under low soil water, nutrient diffusion is reduced because water films are thin, increasing diffusion path length. Low soil water, number 3, low soil water exerts a physiological effect on roots, reducing elongation, turgidity and density of root hairs, decreasing nutrient uptake. Fourth point is that adequate K nutrition aids or helps stomata closure during drought, reducing transpiration, water loss, etc. Adequate nutrition encourages a rapid canopy development that reduces soil water evaporation. So, this is indirect way that nutrient or nutrition is helpful in reducing the water requirement or reducing the losses of water. Adequate nutrition advances maturity that may initiate flowering, pollination and grain filling before summer periods of drought and high temperature. Plant residues increase with increasing yield. Increasing surface residue cover, which increases infiltration, reduces runoff and lowers wind speeds at the soil surface, all of which increase potential water availability. Water and crop response to nutrients. The growth and yield response of a crop to fertilizer application is directly related to the level of water supply. This is very important point. Crop response results from the combined influence of several factors that affect the crop growth, nutrient availability and nutrient uptake. The greater response to nitrogen as well as higher yield level with increasing rainfall is also shown in figure. Let us see on the next slide. This is a very good slide. You can see effect of rainfall on crop yield. Rainfall here means the availability of the water. Higher the rainfall, more is the availability of water in the soil. On x-axis you have nitrogen applied, on y-axis it is grain yield tons per hectare. And nitrogen rates are in kilogram per hectare. So, you see three different line. One the lower one, other one is in the middle and third one is in the top. So, you see 1 in 20 years drought. The first line, which is the lower one, so it is giving you very low yield. Even if nitrogen application is 100 kg per hectare, yield is 1.5 tons per hectare or somewhere around that. But if the average rainfall is increasing, then you see the change in the yield, grain yield is increasing. And if you get above average rainfall, then the yield is highest. That is very simple and known to most of us that application of nitrogen you need more water. See another interesting research, effect of nitrogen fertilization on yield of rapeseed under irrigated and dryland conditions. As name suggests, under irrigated conditions means there is no shortage of water, and dryland or rain-fed condition you have shortage of water. So, you can see on x-axis it is nitrogen applied 56, 112, 168, 224 etc. and see on y-axis this is the yield of the rapeseed in kg per hectare. And see two lines here, one is lower one and other one is higher one. So, see when you have dryland conditions, the yields or response is very low. Up to the highest level of 224, you may get somewhere around 850 or something like that, the yield. But if your conditions are irrigated, in irrigated conditions you can say that you can get up to 2000 kg rapeseed yield per hectare. It is nutrients are same, application rates are same, then what is the difference? Why the yields are more in irrigated case and less in dryland case? The answer is very simple, that in irrigated conditions you have assured supply of water. And not just quantity or yield, the quality is also influenced by the water supply. More the water supply, of course we get more yield, but we may compromise with the quality. For example, under dry land or rain-fed conditions, we get higher protein content in wheat or barley or some cereal crops than irrigated condition. See this case. Protein content in grain and soil supply, soil moisture supply. So, high protein percentage at low extractable soil moisture. Increase in yield and decrease in protein content of barley as a function of available soil water at 4 fertilizer levels with an average 117 millimeter June to July precipitations. Lines descending left to right are protein, those ascending left to right are yield. So, see there are three axes. X-axis has available soil water. The supply of water is increasing towards right side. On Y1 axis you have yield starting from 0 to 4000, and on Y2 axis, or sometimes it is called Z axis, there you have protein percentage starting from 10, 15, something like that. Now, see the yield. Highest yield is obtained at N180 followed by 120, means increase the level of nitrogen, we get the increased yield. This is simple relationship. Now, see the protein. Highest protein is at highest level of nitrogen. This is one conclusion. And second conclusion is, as we increase the water supply, the protein content decreases. So, this is very good fact, and most of the time some people prefer Madhya Pradesh wheat, MP wheat, because it is mostly rain fed, and it is, if it is grown under rain fed conditions or less moisture conditions, its protein content is more. The variation in rainfall greatly affect the optimal rate of nutrient application. Generally, more nutrient application is required to make use of a better water supply, and the economically optimal rate of nutrient application also rises. If the plants have access to adequate water supply but not to the adequate nutrients, this causes the underutilization of the valuable water resource, and it can also happen other way around. Water and nutrient use efficiency, how the water supply will affect the nutrient use efficiency. In agronomic terms, nutrient use efficiency means the increase in yield obtained per unit of applied nutrient. It is the same as rate of response and can be calculated as yield of fertilized plot, where you have applied fertilizer minus yield at control divided by the rate of fertilizer application. And in this case, the unit is kg increase in grain yield per kg applied nutrient. So, this is the unit you must remember. So, many crop management practices influence the actual yield level and the response to applied nutrients by crops. There may be fertilizer factor, crop factor, soil factor, climatic factor, weather factor. So many factors will affect the nutrient use efficiency, but water factor is one of the important factors. So, nutrient use efficiency may be improved by minimizing the fertilizer losses from the soil that are caused by poor water management, for example, leaching or denitrification. The nutrient use efficiency can also be improved by ensuring that lack of water does not at any stage retard crop growth or nutrient uptake appreciably. Excess water can be a cause of nutrient losses, and insufficient water at a critical stage can limit growth and yield, means it can limit more growth or more yield at critical growth stage. Hence, at least at critical growth stage, there should be enough supply of water to get maximum nutrient use efficiency. It is also important that all other production inputs and management factors are at adequate level. Balanced fertilization also improves nutrient use. You can see in this data by Prasad 2009, effect of balanced application of fertilizer NPK on yield and agronomic efficiency of applied nitrogen in rain-fed crops in India. So, see, first column is about the crops pulse, millet, maize, sorghum, then yield in tons per hectare at control, at nitrogen, at NPK. So, you can see that yields when we apply N, yields are more, and when we apply NPK, the yields are still highest, yields are highest. See the case of agronomic efficiency, kg grain increase per kg nitrogen. When you use sole nitrogen, the nitrogen use efficiency for pulse millet is just 4.7, which is almost triple, which is tripled or 3 times when you use NPK. From 4.7 it increases to 15. In maize from 19.5 to 39, means it is doubled when we use NPK together. Balanced fertilization. See the last case of sorghum. The use efficiency is doubled from 5.3 it has become 12. So, balanced fertilization is very, very important for getting maximum benefit from the fertilization. The timing of water application influences nutrient use efficiency considerably through its effect on crop yield, which can be reduced substantially where water supply through irrigation or otherwise is deficient at the most critical stages of crop growth. In most crops, the active vegetative growth stage and the reproductive growth stage have been found to be most critically affected by moisture deficiency as summarized. So, you can see these critical stages for water. In rice, head development and flowering is the most critical, followed by vegetative period, active tilling and ripening. In wheat, flowering, yield formation and vegetative period, particularly crown root initiation. So, this is in order of importance, means the first one is the most important and last one is the least important. Take the case of sorghum. Here flowering and yield formation followed by vegetative period. Maize, flowering, grain filling and vegetative period. Peas, flowering and yield formation, vegetative period. Potato, you have stolonization or formation of stolons and tuber initiation most critical, followed by yield formation and early vegetative stage are critical for water. Groundnut, flowering and yield formation, particularly pod setting. Safflower, seed filling and flowering, vegetative period. Cotton, flowering and ball formation. Sugarcane, period of tilling and stem elongation. So, understanding of these stages is very, very important. We can take care that at these stages there should not be shortage of water if we want to get maximum benefit from our fertilizers. So, there are now see water and nutrient losses. Under certain conditions, this water, excess water can lead to losses of the nutrients. So, there are 3 main ways in which water status may influence loss of nutrients from the soil plant system. Number 1, leaching of nutrients. Number 2, denitrification, and 3 is volatilization. I think most of you understand these processes. Just to refresh your memories, here is a picture. You can see how this ammonia volatilization happens. Nitrogen is there in the ammonical form in the soil and it can come from fertilizer or decomposition of organic matter. And this ammonical form of nitrogen can be directly converted to ammonia in the under alkaline condition or when you have high pH of the soil and high temperature. So, it is lost as ammonia form. So, it escapes to the air and some of the ammonical ion or ammonium ion can be converted to nitrate by the process of nitrification. I think most of you know the process of nitrification, 2-step process. First step, conversion of nitrite, ammonical nitrogen to nitrite and then to nitrate. So, this nitrate can be leached down and not only nitrate, there may be some other negatively charged ion like H2PO4 or sulfate or chloride or potassium or calcium can also leach down. So, there is loss of nutrient due to excess supply of water and this nitrate which is there in the reduced zone or anaerobic layer of the soil can also be denitrified. It can escape to the environment. So, you can see that we should avoid excess supply of water, otherwise nutrient use efficiency will decline. Now, leaching, excessive rainfall or irrigation results in the passage of water through the soil profile carrying soluble nutrients. Nitrate, sulfate or even borate can leach down. The amount of loss depends on how much water moves through the soil profile and the content of soluble nutrients. Higher the content, higher the water, higher is the loss. So, the extent of nutrient losses must be considered when determining the nutrient application rates. Next loss is denitrification. Leached nitrate can either enter the anaerobic soil layer or water bodies and get denitrified as N2 or N2O. Such conditions can also happen in the pockets or compact soil zones even within an aerated soil. A soil is very well aerobic, but soil may have certain anaerobic sites which are microsites actually. In those sites denitrification can happen though your soil is well aerated. Waterlogging causes loss of nitrogen through denitrification of nitrate. See, the other important loss is ammonia volatilization. Ammonia volatilization from urea and some ammonium containing or forming fertilizer is influenced by temperature, soil pH and soil water status. Under very dry conditions, little loss occurs. This is interesting. And in stable wet situations, ammonium remains in solution. If soil moisture status is intermediate, or where the soil or flood water loses water rapidly by evaporation, volatilization of ammonia can be appreciable. If urea is surface broadcast, which is a practice, most of the farmers they broadcast the urea on the surface, where we get very high rates of ammonia volatilization and which is a irreparable loss. So, if urea is surface broadcast without incorporation on alkaline soils with inadequate moisture during periods of high temperature, the ammonia volatilization losses are high. Means these are the factors which encourage ammonia volatilization. Number one is your pH of the soil. In alkaline soils, you have high volatilization. Similarly, inadequate moisture during periods of high temperature also affects the volatilization rates of ammonia. Let us see how crop nutrition influences water demand. First of all, let us understand water requirement of crops. Water requirement is the quantity of water needed for transpiration from the green plants, evaporation from the soil and other kind of water losses during application is your water requirement. The amount of water consumed by crops is both plant specific and climate dependent. It is also determined largely by the nutrient supply and the size of crop canopy or leaf surface. Water requirement continues. To minimize water requirements, losses as during conveyance of irrigation water, maybe in the channels or sometimes runoff from the field, seepage by deep percolation, leaching and waterlogging should be avoided. Certain measures should be taken to avoid these water losses during the conveyance or right in the field. Water requirement must be met from water stored in the soil profile. It is represented by SW plus rainfall RW plus irrigation water IW. Therefore, the irrigation water requirement means water to be applied by irrigation is equal to water requirement minus soil water contribution minus rainwater contribution. So, that much water will be required to be applied by irrigation. Even where the total amount of water is sufficient, this may not ensure high yields if there is a water deficit in critical growth stages. Means you supply water throughout all the periods, but you miss the water at critical growth period. Then reduction in the growth and performance or economic yield will be much less, much high. A good nutrient supply also creates higher osmotic pressure in plant cells, which results in a better resistance to drought. Potassium ions play an important role in regulating the functioning of stomata in the leaves that control water loss. Thus, a good supply of potassium can conserve the water within the plant system, means it can regulate the rates of transpiration. Phosphorus is yet another nutrient which is helpful in conserving the water. Phosphate promotes early root growth, which allows better access to water from deeper soil layers and also shortens the growth period. This is quite interesting. It can shorten the growing period of the plant. Thus, it will reduce the requirement of water. This leads to early ripening, which reduces the water demand by the plants. To a certain extent, a shortage of water can be compensated for by optimizing plant nutrition. Thus, by managing certain nutrients, we can optimize or reduce slightly the water requirement without compromising the growth and yield of the plants. Under low rainfall, nutrient input, especially of nitrogen, should be adjusted to the amount of stored soil water. Means under dryland or rain-fed conditions, depending upon the availability of water, one should use the nutrients. If we use other nutrients in excess, but our water supply from the soil is less, then it can be more dangerous. So we should apply nutrients as per availability of water in the soil. See this data from Milu 1976 about crop nutrition and water demand, and the title of the study is Response of Rain-Fed Wheat to Nitrogen in Soils with Different Stored Moisture Levels. So there are three different stored moisture level in the soil, or you can say there are three levels of water in the soil. So one is 19 centimeter of stored soil moisture, other is 26 centimeter, and third one is 32 centimeter. So you can see the height of these graphs or these lines. The line which has the lowest place is having just 19 centimeter of stored water. If you make it 26, the height of the line increases, and at 32 centimeter stored water, you have the highest response of wheat in terms of wheat grain yield. Means more the water, more response to application of nitrogen. Now concentrate your now on water use efficiency. Water use in crop production is not confined to transpiration from plants. Additional water losses such as evaporation must be considered in calculations of water use efficiency. Now let us see what is water use efficiency. Water use efficiency can be defined as the economic crop yield. Remember, it is in relation to the economic crop yield, which is grains kg per hectare or tons per hectare, per unit of water used by the crop for evapotranspiration, which is commonly called as ET. It is expressed in kilograms of crop per millimeter of water used. Water use efficiency is equal to grain yield kg per hectare can be divided by evapotranspiration ET, and unit is kilogram per millimeter. So see, from this formula we can see how we can increase the water use efficiency. One way is to increase the grain yield, and grain yield can be increased by several crop management practices and variety. Selection of variety is very important if we want to increase the grain yield, and also all the crop management practices should be followed to the best so that we get best output from each input. So if we increase the yield, we can increase the water use efficiency, but of course there is a limit to increase the grain yield. Similarly, we can reduce the ET. If we reduce the ET, we can increase the water use efficiency, but this ET should be reduced to the extent that the growth and yield of the plants is not affected. Up to that level you can decrease ET. So therefore, these are the ways to increase water use efficiency. And similarly, in inputs, fertilizer has very important role to increase the water use efficiency. You have seen throughout this lecture how these fertilizers are important to increase water use efficiency. Now see this grain yield and relationship between grain yield and water use efficiency reported by Music in 1994, relationship between irrigated and dryland winter wheat yield and water use efficiency. So in this case, because condition is irrigated, so as the yields are increased, so is the water use efficiency in case of irrigated wheat. But under dryland situation, it is not like this. So under irrigated situation, he got or they got very good response in respect of water use efficiency. Now see another data on water use efficiency, effect of fertilizer NPK application on water use efficiency and grain yield of palm millet grown at 4 sites in Niger during rainy seasons of 1985 and 1986. So it is mean of 2 years data, and it is very interesting data. Kindly concentrate your eyes here and see there are 3 locations. One is Sador, Doso and Bango. So there are 3 different locations, and at these 3 different locations the rainfall are different. At first location it is 543 millimeter, at another it is 583 millimeter, at the third location it is 711 millimeter. Means it is increasing from one location to another location. Now see the yields, and these yields were obtained under 2 conditions. One was fertilizer was applied, in other there was no fertilizer, it was a control. See the yield at the first location 1.57 and 0.46, and see the water use efficiency. When you apply fertilizer, the water use efficiency is more, 4.14, and no fertilizer, it is just 1.24. That means application of fertilizer is increasing the water use efficiency. See the next case of Doso. In this case, the yield with fertilizer was 1.7 and without fertilizer 0.78. Almost it was double, the yield was double when we apply fertilizer. And see the case of water use efficiency at the same place. It was almost double, from 2 it has become 4.25. So, application of fertilizer has increased water use efficiency at 3 places. Now, you can compare the water use efficiency when we apply fertilizer with at 3 different places. This was within a place. Now, you see as we increase the irrigation or rainfall quantity, there is increase in the water use efficiency. When rainfall was 543 and you applied fertilizer, the water use efficiency was 4.14 kilogram per hectare per millimeter. But when rainfall was 583 millimeter, the water use efficiency increased to 4.25, and when rainfall became 711 millimeter, water use efficiency increased to 4.68. This is very and crystal clear that as you increase the water supply up to 711 millimeter by rainfall, there was increase in water use efficiency, and also we get more water use efficiency when we apply fertilizer over the control. So, this is quite interesting study giving us a clear cut picture of relationship between fertilizer application and rainfall vis-a-vis water use efficiency. Now, see, good nutrient supply must complement irrigation, or as part of the additional water will be wasted, leading to a drop of water use efficiency. Means in this case water will remain underutilized. We should increase nutrient supply so that we get the best out of the water which has been supplied to the crop. Once full crop cover is achieved, water use, that is ET, from the field is controlled mainly by incoming solar energy, nutritional status, etc. In these circumstances, any input factor that increases economic yield will definitely improve the nutrient use efficiency. Now, see, in rain-fed areas, water use efficiency. In rain-fed dryland, the plants often have to face moisture stress at some stage of growth. Whatever the level of fertilizer used, the factor most often limiting production in rain-fed dryland is of course water supply. Fertilizer rates must be decided in relation to the level of water supply. You have seen in many studies, we should schedule the rates of fertilizer as per the availability of water under rain-fed drylands. And the anticipated rainfall should also be considered in mind while determining the optimum rates of fertilizer or nutrient application. It is advisable to apply nitrogen in more than one split in order to take advantage of rainfall expected during crop growth. So, these kind of recommendations are really important in case of rain-fed dryland, and these are also applicable for irrigated lands also. When we have split application of nitrogen, it increases the use efficiency of nitrogen. Under very dry conditions, too much fertilizer applied before planting or very early during crop growth may affect crop yield and water use efficiency adversely or in negative sense. Now, we continue with the water use efficiency in rain-fed drylands. Excess fertilizer stimulates vigorous vegetative growth, which uses up the limited water supplies, leaving very little water for the reproductive and grain filling stages of growth. This is a case where a luxuriant crop stand can be counterproductive. And optimizing plant nutrition should aim to maximize both nutrient use efficiency and water use efficiency. So, this is the main advantage and main everybody should look for higher values of both water as well as nutrient use efficiency. The level of nutrient and level of water that give us maximum values of these two efficiencies will be the best level, and that we need to identify with the experience or doing the research. The best way to achieve this will depend on the soil fertility status, the water regime in a given production system and moisture conservation practices such as mulching. Sometimes things are not in our control. We do not know what quantity of rainfall will occur. We can make predictions, we can make some ideas, however, we can never be sure about this. Phosphorus application in different rain-fed regions of India increased water use efficiency by 15 to 20% in dryland wheat, 22 to 55% in finger millet, 41 to 99% in chickpea, 17% in linseed and up to 19% in mixed wheat chickpea cropping system. So, such kind of results are quite important, that application of phosphorus under limited water supply conditions or dryland conditions increases the water use efficiency. It is other way around, that fertilizer is increasing the water use efficiency under dryland conditions, particularly use of phosphatic fertilizer is important. And as you know and already know, I discussed it, that phosphorus increases the root growth and better utilization of moisture. For irrigated uplands, now see situation in irrigated kind of conditions, the fertilizer requirement is normally high and the amount to be applied can be decided in relation to soil fertility level, expected yield and local management practices. Both nutrient use efficiency and water use efficiency will be maximized by providing adequate amounts of both water and nutrient inputs for full growth and yield. Their application should be timed so that crop nutrient and water needs are always met. They interact positively with each other. In wetland rice, yields are determined by the climate, season, variety management and the nutrients supplied. Generally, the nutrient use efficiency and water use efficiency are lower in such systems compared with upland crops because of the large volume of water required and high nitrogen losses. Efficiency of both the inputs can be improved by applying nitrogen in 2 to 3 splits during crop growth and by using efficient nitrogen carriers. Certain slow release fertilizer or nitrification inhibitors can be used to increase the nitrogen use efficiency. There is scope for economizing on water and flooded rice culture, because if the soil can be kept saturated, water logging or deep submergence may not be required. There are some alternative method of rice production that consume less water and give very good nutrient use efficiency. Such methods are system of rice intensification, direct seeded rice, rice on beds and some aerobic kind of situation, aerobic rice. So, these kind of rices can be adopted wherever we have short of water supply. Now, see water stress and crop nutrition. A crop receiving balanced nutrition is able to explore a large volume of soil in order to access water and nutrients. Plants facing moisture stress can also suffer from nutrient stress owing to the very close association between water and nutrient availability. According to Vlach and Villor, 1994, the main stress in relation to nitrogen management is probably the uncertainty of rainfall where irrigation is not available. Where rainfall is excessive or very intense, nitrogen is subject to leaching or denitrification, while with drought it has a tendency to remain in the soil unutilized by the crop. Phosphorus has a marked effect on root growth. Crops deficient in phosphorus are not able to access water from deeper soil layers due to poor root development. Therefore, such crops are more susceptible to drought than crops with adequate P having a well developed root systems. Similarly, potassium has an osmotic role in the plant that enables the plant tissue to hold on to its water. The movement of K in and out of the guard cells that surround the stomata on plant leaves is responsible for the opening and closing of these cells, which greatly assist in reducing moisture loss when the plant encounters moisture stress. Where plants are deficient in potassium, stomata cannot function properly and water loss from plants can be very high. Application of K, that is potassium, has been shown to enhance the drought resistance of plant under moisture stress. Hope you have enjoyed this lecture. Thank you very much.